Welcome back to another episode of the Heatio Home Energy Show. And today we are joined by Paul, who has been on the journey to have a electrified home from top to bottom. We were just touching on it then that even the induction hob is now installed and
everything fully electrified.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me, Simon.
No, it's thank you very much for coming up as well. I believe from down south, so it's a bit of a
sunny Sussex.
Sunny Sussex. You've actually brought the sun to Liverpool, so thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we're going to before we get into this this journey that you've been on, which kind of sets out the home of the future, I think, although it's available now. Just set the scene a little bit. What's your background? I'm self-employed. I work for myself, providing technical services to garages. Basically go around and fix cars and train them and help them with cars that are a bit more challenging to fix. So that's my business. My wife's a physiotherapist for the NHS. We've got one daughter who's just turned 2, and we live in a nice little 3-bedroom detached house in Sussex. And so you're not sat there with 20 years behind you doing heat pump systems or solar systems or anything like that. No. And I think that's really important to highlight, because we do have a lot of engineers on this show. We do have a lot of industry professionals on this show from within the renewable energy sector. But as we had with Mick Wall, I think sometimes it's about showcasing this from the homeowner's perspective, and actually the challenges and tribulations that come with going on this journey. So what was the situation before you embarked on this? How did you heat your home? How did you use energy in your home?
We bought the house, we moved in, we were there for about 6 months before we did anything, but it's a 1970s house that originally would have had a system boiler downstairs in the kitchen with a hot water tank upstairs and the landing in an airing cupboard. When we moved in, it had already been switched to a combi that was in the loft, which was a bit like Trigger's broom. It had various bits changed over the years and was probably going to need a few more quite quickly when we moved in. And we were, like most houses, we were primarily gas consumption for heating. We drove normal cars, combustion cars, petrol and diesel. And we wanted to do something different.
And it's in that very first step in the journey. Did you mentioned you were using gas like everybody else? You were using electric. Did you have visibility of how much gas and electricity you were using?
At the time we moved in, we didn't, because we moved in. The previous occupant hadn't had a smart tariff, or a tariff that had a smart meter attached to it. So other than the bill data, the normal quarterly bills or whatever, that's all we had.
But you had a smart meter in the home?
We did. We had a smart meter fitted. And when we moved in, because we'd switched to Octopus, and they installed a smart meter.
So that was good. So at the point of
at the very beginning, when we first moved in, which I think was we finally moved in the August, and they'd fitted a smart meter to sign us up to Octopus. The slight twist is that my wife's car then needed changing, and we were looking at options, and we were looking at electrification and going down the electric car route. She does about 30 miles a day, so it's kind of ideal. And we wanted to do it for us. It was the obvious way forward. And we looked at Renault Zoes, Nissan Leafs, and we ended up settling with a Nissan Leaf. And coincidentally, I'd seen OVO were doing a government-backed trial for vehicle to grid, where the car was used as a battery power source for the house and to support the grid at times. So we signed up to OVO. OVO, they came and ripped out those smart meters and put some new ones in.
Did they?
They did. Which was because they were SMETS 1, so they weren't compatible across the different brands at the time.
Oh, okay.
So they put those in, but that gave us visibility of gas consumption and our electricity consumption at half-hour intervals, which was really useful later on.
I think it's an important step right at the start, because there seemed to have been such a big push to have smart meters installed in UK homes, but the actual value proposition to a customer, when they're on more traditional kind of fixed rate tariffs and they're just paying the same amount, doesn't matter what time of day they use it, then where's the benefit to the homeowner?
Well, in our case, it was just visibility of what we consumed and when we consumed it, which then gave us a bit more information for later on, for making further upgrades and modifications.
But it's that step, I guess.
It is that step, yeah. Without the smart meter data, we wouldn't have had all of that. So I think smart meter data is really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Even if you're not on a smart meter, it's useful to have the information.
Yeah, and even if you're not using it necessarily at that point in time, but it is something that if you are a homeowner, you're eligible to have one fitted.
Yeah.
You have the right to have one fitted. And actually, even if you are at that initial stage, you might not even be considering buying an electric vehicle or having a heat pump fitted in your home or battery or solar or anything like that. But just having the smart meter fitted it's something that you are allowed to have, and that the energy company should supply you with.
And now they've moved on. I mean, when we moved into our house, there were lots of different brands of smart meters, and some were compatible and some weren't with other suppliers. Now, if you get a smart meter, it's SMETS2, it's compatible across the whole industry. So there's no disadvantage to having one fitted, and it gives you options if you want to change supplier and go to a slightly different type of tariff, and
that's one
smart
thing
tariff.
We'd encourage anybody who hasn't got one yet.
Do that first.
Yeah, and a good way of finding out whether your smart meter is working that well or not. So you can register on the Heatio Flex platform. You can then gain access to your smart meter data, but we'll also be able to tell you if the meter's not working, for instance, or if it's an older version of a meter, and then you can reach out to your energy supplier and have it upgraded. We actually had somebody contact us last week who they were on the first generation of smart meter. They connected to the platform. We went away, we came back, we could check that the data wasn't flowing. They then contacted Octopus. Octopus sent somebody out, upgraded the meter, and now they've got that visibility right at the start of their journey. Before they advance onto all the clever stuff that you've done since then. But so your first step on that journey was looking at the
vehicle to grid.
And were you looking at it from, you mentioned the OVO trial. So the vehicle to grid is the ability for to take power from the battery in the car and actually send it back to the grid and be paid for doing that.
Yeah, I mean the trial was not necessarily just to pay us for in that way. It was a trial to show their platform, their flexible platform, and we were compensated, if you like, for what was going through the car, because there's a certain amount of losses charging and then discharging it. But yeah, we broke even with it. But it was good for us, and we wanted to be part of it.
And were you looking? Was that the starting point? Did you see this pilot around vehicle to grid, and that triggered you to look at electric vehicle, or were you looking at electric vehicle?
Other way around. Yeah. We were literally looking at my wife had an old 200 and something odd thousand mile Volkswagen Golf that was dying, and we were just looking at alternatives, whether to replace it with another diesel, a dirty diesel, or a different car. And we just looked at electric. We thought, well, why not? We're a perfect use case for it. We've got a driveway. We can charge it at home, even if it's with a 3-pin plug charger. My wife only did about 30 to 40 miles a day commuting for work. So, and it was the same pretty much every day. So we were kind of the perfect use case for an EV of the affordable end of the spectrum. We weren't going to go and buy a new Tesla with 300-mile range. It was going to be the lower end of the budget spectrum, and that's exactly what we did.
Which is, as you say, if the living circumstances are suitable for it, and they fit in it, and that's the thing. I think when a lot of people are looking at that kind of decision making part, I came from living in the sticks in North Wales, where actually a car was an absolute necessity for me. And now moving to Liverpool, bar doing the school run, it's kind of those 30 miles are probably about the maximum that I'll do in a day. So I think as people's living circumstances change and they start looking at those considerations, but what was it that drove you to consider an electric vehicle as part of that consideration?
Primarily my background involves working with cars every day, so I've seen how technologies evolve within the motor industry, and I've been an electric vehicle trained technician for over 12 years now, since I first started bringing them to the UK in reasonable numbers. And I've always just seen that the evolution of diesel and petrol cars, more emissions reduction systems added, more complexity, and an element that cars just don't seem to last as long as they used to last because of all the extra complexity.
That's interesting. They actually coming from it because
and that's what pays my mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's interesting.
Cars breaking and unreliable, that's my business. But electric vehicles, despite being trained and being able to operate with them, I don't see that much work from them because they're inherently more reliable.
So actually the more traditional kind of combustion engines with all those emissions factors, they're becoming more complex, which some people think, well, electric vehicles, I had somebody tell me the other day that they wouldn't consider electric vehicle because if it went on fire, the traditional fire engines wouldn't be able to put it out. I just thought,
if a car's on fire, you're not going to get back anyway.
you know,
I've seen plenty of diesels catch fire with diesel particulate filters. You're not going to fix it. It's gone.
Yeah.
If your car's on fire, get out.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, you're not going to stay inside it, so probably the best thing to do is run as far away as possible.
I'm not going to spout it, but there are lots of statistics around that, and you're much less likely to have an electric vehicle catch fire than a diesel or petrol catch fire.
So, but if traditional electric combustion engines are becoming more complex, as you say, there's a spike in people being trained on how to service and manage electric vehicles. But if anybody's best placed to kind of convey that message, it's the people that are going out there, they're working in the garages, because I would imagine you'd probably have a lot of garages that would be turning around saying, "Oh no, stick with your traditional combustion
it's the same.
engine."
I think it's probably the same in the plumbing world, the heating world. Is heat pump. Anything new is always got some resistance.
Yeah.
Usually through lack of understanding or maybe a bit of fear. But yeah, a lot of my customers are, they weren't confident dealing with electric vehicles. And the reality is that for most day-to-day stuff that they ever do with them, it doesn't make any difference. It's just
that's interesting.
It's the same as every other car.
Yeah, I suppose I say a bit of reluctance to change, but you do need these early adopters like yourself in this journey to make it happen. And so, okay, so you've gone for the electric vehicle.
Yeah.
You're part of a government trial then around vehicle to grid.
Vehicle to grid, yeah.
And so just for everybody's benefit, what did that look like? What being part of that trial?
Well, that trial was to put in. You had to have there were two trials together, funded by BEIS. One was for Octopus and one was for OVO. Again, the slightly different business cases for it. The OVO one, you could use your own car. With the Octopus one, you had to lease one from them. And we ruled that out just from a financial perspective. It wasn't for us. So we went with the OVO one. We bought a second-hand Nissan Leaf. They came out and did lots of pre-installation checks to see if the house was suitable and the location was suitable. And that's when we discovered that we had a shared supply with our neighbour. It wasn't the traditional looped supply, which is what they normally look for with multiple connections going through the meter. It was shared underground. So our DNO had to come out and dig the road up on the main road, and they closed it for a week.
This is something I genuinely think. I mean, it's not necessarily a day-to-day consideration for people, but when these moments start happening, where you start considering these factors, that could be for some people a big barrier.
100%. If it hadn't been, there's two sides to that. At the time, they were being very cautious in terms of the capacity of all the cables and erring very much on the side of caution. It's only a 6 kilowatt charger, so it's not a massive extra load on what we would have been putting through the cables. But because it was the project that it was, and it was a BEIS funded project, they had quite a high threshold or low threshold for problems. So they insisted on a bigger supply, and for us that meant the cable had to be replaced, and we had to have our own dedicated supply fitted. And that's
actually going to be quite common, I think.
Yeah, and expensive. If it hadn't been, there's a, I don't know if it still runs, but at the time there's a fund for DNOs to upgrade to enable low carbon technology. So all that was paid for by that fund. Otherwise, it would have been £12,000-15,000 to have it done.
It's a really interesting one, because we've seen it from people who start right at the start of the journey. So they kind of come to us and they'll say they're looking for advice on ways in which they can save money on their energy bills. And we always recommend that you connect to the platform, you start to visualize your energy data, and then we start to build that conversation around how are you using energy in the home? What ways in which can we impact the amount you're spending on energy? But at some point in that journey, there's going to be a consideration around solar. There's going to be a consideration around electrified heating, electric vehicles, battery storage, and that connection to the grid is so important and
vital.
Yeah, and getting that and if that at that stumbling point, if you find that the grid connection needs to be upgraded, and even if you are you can receive that free of charge, but you've got a 6 to 8 week wait for that to happen. It can kind of derail the project, especially if it's something like the boiler's broken and you're thinking about putting electric heating in and you get told that you're waiting 6 to 8 weeks. getting ahead of that and getting people to a position where they're making those decisions to have those investigations done and maybe have the supply. We've come across plenty where they've got loop supplies. And I've come across one where it's connected underground.
It was an underground connection in the neighbour's garden, and it was the next door neighbour had the main supply going in, and then it was split like a Y connection, if you like.
Wow.
Then splits two ways. So we had a 60 amp supply, and I think they wanted at least an 80. We ended up with a 100 amp supply, which is just a dedicated feed. But if we hadn't known that would have caused more problems later down the line with the other thing.
You wouldn't have
other
been
items
able to
that
have a electrified heating system fitted at that.
No.
And so they've come out, they've done this assessment, they've identified this challenge.
Yeah.
You mentioned there is a pot of funds there for network operators to make these connections to enable this technology to go in, which it is network specific, but
we were lucky.
Yeah.
We're with the area of UK Power Networks, and UK Power Networks were very pro vehicle to grid trial, so much so that they were very good. I cannot fault them at all. They came out very quickly, and I think it was about 6 weeks to have it done. But that was the road closed for a week.
Really?
We're on a main bus route as well, on a main road.
So they literally had to come and do that.
Yeah, because the main power cable for the road runs on the opposite side of the road itself, by the footpath. So they came and closed the road, dug a channel, run a new cable, and lots of different teams, lots of different skills.
Oh, your neighbours must have loved you.
We'd only been there for 6 months as well. Yeah, I think we were the troublemakers on the estate. Yeah,
and in that work, did they do something in there that was meaning that this problem wasn't going to be a case for other people on the estate? Was that was just? No,
it was just. I think to be honest, we're the small house, if you like. We're surrounded either side of us by quite large properties. So they had the main power cables coming in, and our house, I think, was one of the last to be built on the estate of the development as they were building it back in the 70s. And according to UK Power Networks, it was quite a common thing for builders to save money and just tee off another supply.
Jeez. I think these are some of the challenges, aren't they? It's not just the adoption of the technology, but the infrastructure that we've got in place as a country is actually not fit for purpose at this stage to make that transition.
In some cases. I mean, the reality is now, knowing what we know now and how technology has moved on, even in the time since we first did that really wouldn't be a problem now, because you can load share with EV chargers. They've got a visibility of your current connection to the grid, and you can set the limits for what your power consumption is, so you'll stay within it. All of this was not possible when we first signed up for it. So that's why they were being so cautious.
And I guess that's part of the development that we've seen. But at the same time, you do tend to find that when you're making applications to have this technology connected, that they tend to err on the side of caution all the way through. And but if there is one message there to take away, if you're watching this and you're considering these technologies for the future, it's contacting your network operators. You can go onto Google, type in district network operators. You'll be able to put your postcode in, see who your network operator is for that region, and be able to request to have your network connection upgraded. It's usually somewhere near your consumer unit or where your smart meter comes in. You'll have a cutout rating on. I
think with UK Power Networks, they've got a smart portal now.
Oh, okay.
So you can sign on as a consumer with your and do exactly that.
That's
you can request an upgrade, or at least effectively get start a process without actually doing something, just to find out where you would stand if you wanted to add something.
That's got to be the first step in that journey, hasn't it? Yeah. Getting your point to where your home has got a supply that is going to be suitable for this technology in the future, just so you've got the choice at least when you do get to that point. Otherwise, if you wait for that to happen, and in your scenario there, the upgrade, closing the road and the upgrade, I think, as you say, unfortunately it is more common, but in the same time, we've had applications where they've got a cutout of 60 amps, which if you have a look on the little fuse next to where your incoming supply is, it'll usually have a little sticker on there. If there's no sticker on there, you still make the application because they'll come in and check. And it could be something as simple as somebody turning up, and it takes about 2 minutes where they cut the zip ties and they fit a new fuse.
Put a bigger fuse in.
Yeah, and then walk out the door and you're ready to go. So
that's what they hoped they were going to be doing on ours.
Yeah.
They hoped to turn up with an 80 amp fuse and replace the 60 with an 80, and then they went.
And we've seen it even with loop supplies as well, where somebody's just got power coming in and it happens to feed their neighbour's house first, and then it loops over from the roof to the next one, and they just come in and they run a straight power supply. But if you're owed the right to have that, if it's absolutely allowed that they will come in and do that. Considering we all pay standing charges on our energy bills, therefore we're all paying network operators to keep our network running. I'd encourage anybody that is, whether they are completely against heat pumps, electric vehicle chargers, or solar, and want to consume fossil fuels for the rest of their lives.
Future-proofing your home. And at the moment, there has been funding to enable these technologies. Even if you don't take advantage of it now.
The network operators might hate us.
They will after this, sure.
But I would encourage anybody, because that's a huge challenge that we find, is that when we have customers who have come through, their boiler's broken down, they're in a position now where they're eligible for £7,500 worth of government funding. They want to have a heat pump installed. They've been quoted maybe £2,000 or £3,000 to have that installation done, and they turn around and say, I want to go ahead, and the first thing we see is that they've got a supply to the house that isn't sufficient, and they've got to wait 6 to 8 weeks. If you get ahead of that, so that you're ready for when your boiler does break, and you're in the decision.
Certainly, one of the challenges with boilers being replaced as a distressed purchase is having all the ducks in a row to be able to install a heat pump straight away.
I know I wouldn't get away with it if I turned around and said, right, we're not going to have any heat and hot water for 6 to 8 weeks because I'm waiting on this.
Not a chance.
It would either be taken out of my hands and dealt with, or I'd be sleeping in the spare room for a few weeks.
Or you'd be paying for a hotel.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah. It's definitely going to be more expensive. So get ahead of it. Contact the network operators. So you can go onto Google district network operator, put in the postcode, and you'll see who your network operator is, and it's your electricity network operator that you're looking to contact.
They're going to hate us for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure, Hannah, we need to make sure we push this really, really, all the advertising behind it. Get the network operators getting annoyed with us. Okay, so we've now got an EV.
So where have we got to vehicle to grid? So
vehicle to grid. So you've got your electric vehicle.
Spoken a lot, but not got very far down the path. Yeah,
but we've solved so many problems with the network operators.
Yeah, they really hate us.
So we're going to. So you've got your electric vehicle now.
Yeah,
we got your supply upgraded.
Supply upgraded. Vehicle to grid charger, which was an Indra unit. Great company.
What was the unit? Sorry,
Indra.
Okay.
Indra. They built the charger for the project. They're still developing it now for the new charging connections, the CCS chargers. But the reason the Nissan Leaf was the requirement for the projects was because it had CHAdeMO, which is an old standard, VHS Betamax war. CHAdeMO was the first first DC charging connector to be used in the UK, and that's by its nature is bidirectional, so it supports vehicle to grid from the factory originally.
And this is something that's quite unique because I think it's not off the shelf that an electric vehicle or even a vehicle charger has the ability to send the power that's in your car back to the grid.
It's certainly not normal, but with Japanese cars and the CHAdeMO system that they used, it was from the beginning, which is why it was a very narrow selection criteria for the trial.
And it's just for the benefit of people at home. And you say, well, if I was in a situation where I had my car full of fuel, why am I bothered whether I can send that fuel back to the petrol station?
From the point of view of the trial, they were trying to use it to optimize the carbon intensity of the power being used by the house and to support the grid during times when it was at stress. So the car would charge up when the grid intensity was low, when there was less demand on the grid, and it would put it back into the grid and power the home as well when the grid carbon intensity was higher. And the cost of the network was higher as well. And
we do see that, don't we? It's for maybe the majority of homeowners in the UK where we just pay a flat rate, pence per kilowatt hour of electricity throughout the day. Doesn't matter when we use it. What we're actually paying is a blended rate across times of the day where our energy suppliers buy electricity in its cheapest way. And there's periods of the day where we buy it and it's most expensive. And that's usually linked to the fact that we're burning lots of fossil fuels to generate that electricity in those times.
Yeah, generally the carbon intensity is almost directly related to the cost the actual wholesale cost of that power at the time.
And we see that, is it between, say, 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. is the...
Between 4 and 7 is the period. I mean, we certainly noticed that the most. It's sometimes a bit earlier, sometimes it would go on later, but the car would generally be discharging during that 4 to 7 period to when the grid carbon intensity was the highest and the cost was highest.
And that's because if there's majority of people in the UK are on a flat rate, then there's no real reason or benefit financially to use energy outside of any other times. So people are coming home, they're turning on ovens and
cooking their dinner, making their tea and bathing the kids, do all the things that they would normally do when they come in from work.
And that
just puts that drain on, puts that spike on the grid that they were just trying to soften that blow.
And so you're in a position where they've said, right, okay, if you put this electric vehicle in, or you connect this electric vehicle in and allow the power that's stored in it to be able to be distributed and sent back to the grid, during that period of the day where if you weren't doing that, they'd be firing up a coal-fired power station or a gas-fired power station to make it happen. Just asking the honest question, what's in it for you?
Well, honest question is at the beginning it was something interesting to take part in it. We were both keen to do what we could from an environmental perspective, and it was an opportunity to be part of that process. We were going to buy the car anyway, and we bought the car before we even signed up for the trial, so it wasn't a deal breaker, but it was coincidental that exact time that we bought that car, that trial was requesting applicants and did a bit more digging, and it appealed. There wasn't really much into it apart from we got to keep the charger. So, and actually, if you went and bought one of those chargers, they're about £6,000.
Really?
So, from our point of view, we got a free charger.
Yeah.
We didn't really know what it was going to do when the trial was over. So there was an element of there was a bit of risk involved from our point. We didn't know if it was going to last the whole period of the trial because it was new technology. In reality, it's been great.
And how much would an electric vehicle? I'm just imagining if somebody sat at home and gone £6,000. That's it plus the cost of a car.
Yeah.
What would be the typical kind of going rate of an electric vehicle charger now?
Electric vehicle charging, you can buy them installed for about £1,000.
Right. Okay.
So they're expensive, but completely different ballpark to a vehicle to grid, different technology.
And straight away, you imagine there's some savings associated to having that installed.
Yeah. From our point of view, we had an incentivized rate effectively for the period of the trial, our 2-year trial for the vehicle to grid. We had a incentivized export rate so that the car we'd be paid for what the car would export, and that would cover any costs and losses involved in the discharge process because there is some efficiency changes, and it wouldn't make us a load of money, but it wouldn't cost us money, and it worked for us. But what we did discover, or what I did discover, was that there was also the option to export solar and get paid a slightly less rate, but that slightly less, but it was much better than the market rate for export while we were part of this trial. So that led on to we could get solar and we could have it. We could pay for itself much faster if we had it at the time of the trial. So we did that.
I feel like if I was sat across from you when you raised this with your wife at the time, it was kind of like we could do this.
We could spend £6,000 on a solar system, and we could pay for it really quickly, much quicker than normal. I didn't actually tell her how long, but I did say it would be quicker, and I wasn't lying.
Yeah.
And again, we wanted to do what we could to try and show that these technologies are available for normal, average houses.
It's incredible.
And there's a benefit to them.
But that's a huge amount of faith in you, and also the infrastructure and the system for both you and your wife to be able to commit to going down that journey, because that's another financial commitment on top to actually have the solar. You're backing the fact that there is these export tariffs available to support it. And when we're talking about these export tariffs, this is at the moment in that 4 to 7 p.m. period, as we touched on, we've got fossil fuel generation from big power stations that are burning lots of carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is, actually, if you generate some electricity and put that into the grid, that just means that there's going to be slightly less energy coming from a power station, therefore less carbon going into the network, going into the atmosphere.
Yes.
So just by it might sound like a relatively minor thing to be contributing to it. But if everybody was doing this,
it is that. If everybody did it, it's power stations don't have to exist anymore in certain areas. If everybody adopted that same approach, and that's what the trial was about, was trying to show that actually with the mass adoption of EVs and a chunk of those being vehicle to grid capable, you can have virtual power plants that negate the need for a fossil fuel generator. Whether that just be at the times of high grid demand, like between 4 and 7, or all the time, because you can use it as a variable demand as well as a variable supply. So you can use it to absorb in excess of wind energy if there's a period of normally wind curtailment. You can then use that wind energy and charge the vehicle to grid cars.
And this is the journey, isn't it? This is where we see ultimately for Heatio, that's the platform that we're building. That's the infrastructure that we're building from a software perspective, is that ability to not only optimize and enable people in the home to make this transition and ultimately make it as cost effective as possible, but through that virtual power plant, enabling that ability to shift energy into times of day where there's less, where the carbon intensity is at its lowest, and be in a position where we're consuming as much renewable energy as physically possible.
Yeah, 100%. We don't want to be turning off wind turbines unnecessarily. No. We should have a signal that says use the power now, and not yet. It's not there yet, but I think that's the future.
And it's in its simplest form. That is in a situation where taking where we talk about vehicle to grid, it's just as much about grid to vehicle. And
absolutely.
If the wind turbines are spinning, and we can see that that electricity is not only low carbon, but actually low cost as well, because we know the wholesale prices are directly linked to that, then we can turn on that electric vehicle and get it charging, assuming it's connected.
Exactly.
So you're now, okay, we've got your electric vehicle, it's attached to the house. You've got this very expensive charger that's as part of the mix as well.
We've got solar as well. We've got solar in there.
Yeah. You've persuaded
we've persuaded that that's a good investment for us as a household because of our enhanced export rate during that trial. That was a good decision. We did take advantage of that. And then we probably lived like that for a while. In the process of doing all that, discovered that actually what you tend to find is that because we didn't have direct control of the vehicle to grid, we didn't have the choice to whether it would be charging or discharging at any point. That was down to the trial, the platform that controlled it. So we would quite often have a period in the day where we would be generating too much solar and had nowhere for it to go. So I got a bit geeky and made some announcements via Alexa that said you must turn on the dishwasher or do some washing when we were exporting too much power, which my wife really loved.
My God, that's brave.
Yeah, it was. But I did
you may
also
as well have been saying it yourself.
No, I couldn't have done that. No, she would have hated that if I'd recorded my own voice.
But I guess that announcement coming out is it's actually a kind of call to action for everybody in the household. If you,
absolutely.
You sat there and whether it's the washing machine, the dishwasher, whatever,
it's basically use some power. It's that you've got too much power. The sun's shining. You've done all the work that needs to be done with the solar in the house has been done. You're now exporting an excessive amount of solar to the grid. Make the most of it.
And this is telling something to turn on in the home.
Yeah. And it was as simple as, turn the dishwasher on. Now's a good time. Just indulge on my geekiness for a moment. So what is telling? So you've got solar on the roof. Yeah.
How is it knowing that there's energy being exported?
This is the really geeky bit. Yeah. So I, kind of by accident, but I discovered Home Assistant, which is I'd say an enthusiast piece of software that's really heavily adopted now. But it's a platform that allows you to link different pieces of equipment together through add-ons and software connections. But it allows you to write automations and logic, if you like, to control other things. So a bit like if this, then that. That's kind of a much more advanced extension to that kind of thing. So in this case, it was the solar system was talking to Home Assistant. Home Assistant could see that there was an excess of power going off to the grid.
But what was telling it to do that?
That was the solar metering. Because we had because we had the vehicle to grid, when we had the solar system fitted, it had to be G100 compliant.
Okay.
So that needed a CT clamp on the meter tails that then connects to the solar inverter. So that information is then available inside the inverter. So we knew what was going back to the grid.
But in its simplest format, if you had the CT clamp, or so a clamp is that literally goes over the
goes over the meter tails, or the cables that go in and out of your electricity meter.
So any electrician could come in, fit that, and then if that monitors whether the electricity is flowing in or out, essentially.
Yeah.
So if that was telling us that there is electricity flowing out, and as you say, even if you didn't have the intelligence within the inverter, because there's 1.4 million solar systems in the UK, probably a lot of them are using out-of-date technology.
Yeah.
So if you fitted one of those clamps and that fed into some kind of portal that said, this clamp is telling us that it's exporting, and those clamps aren't particularly expensive.
No, they're not. No.
And that portal could also then tell a smart plug on a washing machine to turn on.
Or in our case, the dishwasher.
Yeah.
I did exactly that. Because we already had the CT clamp for the solar system as part of the DNO requirement for the solar. It's already there. We haven't spent any more money to do it. What I did is got Home Assistant to talk to the solar inverter. The Solar Edge inverter then provides the import-export details, and then just wrote a bit of automation software that effectively told the dishwasher to turn on when there was a surplus of solar. So before the announcement came out by Alexa, the dishwasher would turn on first.
So I know you've done that. So you have. This isn't some space age washing machine that's capable of doing all this stuff.
No. This is fortunately, it's a fairly cheap dishwasher. It came in. It's probably about 15 years old. It was there when we moved into the house. But I found that when if you set the dishwasher to go and then you turn the power off at the wall, the plug, it wouldn't forget what had happened. So you could turn it off. You could set the dishwasher to go. It would start whirring and doing its thing, and you could turn it off at the wall for a day. You could go back and turn it on, and it would pick up exactly where it left off. So I bought a £10 Wi-Fi plug on Amazon that works with Alexa, that also happens to work with Home Assistant, and I did exactly that, but you automated it. So you could arm the solar dishwasher, as we called it.
The solar dishwasher.
You could arm it. It was arm the solar dishwasher. You'd arm the solar dishwasher, which you could use. You could tell Siri to do it as well. Tell Siri to arm the solar dishwasher. You put your dishwasher tablet in, you shut the door. The dishwasher would come on for about 10, 15 seconds, and then it would turn the power off at the plug and give you a little announcement to say the solar dishwasher is ready, waiting for some sunshine. And exactly that. When there was a surplus of solar, the dishwasher would fire back up and use the power.
I like, as from a geek's perspective, that is very exciting. Yeah, but that is amazing. And because actually you're not talking about making significant investments in appliances throughout the home. This is and this, as I say, with the majority of homes that have got solar, one of the big challenges people start talking about is, I'm going to have to upgrade my inverter from the one that went in. Actually, if you could do this in a really basic way of having, like I say, a Wi-Fi plug and a CT clamp, and actually there's a piece of software that kind of removes the programming aspect of things.
For me, Home Assistant was an easy way of doing those things, because it does open you up to relatively cheap bits of equipment to interface it. You could, like, you're right, you can buy a CT clamp that works for Home Assistant for 10 quid. You can buy a Wi-Fi plug or a Zigbee plug that turns an appliance on and off, again, for about 10 quid. So for 20 quid and a bit of time and effort to do it, you can program Home Assistant to do exactly what I've just done with ours.
Yeah.
The difference is on ours, we had the advantage of the solar system already had it. So rather than duplicating it, we just use what we already had.
Taking that back to our developers, because that is, in theory, if we've got it so that, if you go onto the Heatio platform, you've connected your smart meter up, and we just add it down the side where you could say add device. It's
exactly, it is that. It's you're then just writing the software to effectively control the order that things get used and what they're done.
And all you're doing in the home then is you're because at the same time you've scheduled it based on when there's excess solar generating.
Yeah.
But if you had a tariff that actually incentivized you to use electricity at cheaper periods of the day, like okay, it doesn't have to go to the extent of a smart tariff, but if you've got people that are on economy 7 tariffs,
it's exactly the same.
As long as you've got the smart meter, you have access to these tariffs.
And you can then make that dumb dishwasher
smart
for a very cheap investment become a smart dishwasher.
Yeah.
And then it uses that. Then its consumption occurs when it's the cheapest.
I mean, that is something that, you know, there are technology providers like ourselves where we've got to enable this to happen, to make it so that, you know, the average person in the home doesn't have to worry about necessarily, you know, accessing programming and things like that. But actually, if you just had it in a place where you could, you had 2 relatively cost-effective devices that you can
it was a lot of it was experimentation and figuring what you can and can't do, and that's I guess is some of the issue, is that you can't do that for every dishwasher. Some dishwashers are going to be somewhere in the middle where they're a bit clever and they'll reset and do something different when you shut the power off. But the newest ones that are most expensive will have it built in.
What a great way to find out, though, as well.
Yeah,
because it actually just being able to, you know, you turn it on. You turn it off at the power switch.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be a dishwasher engineer somewhere saying,
you'll be going mad. They'll be going crazy. You can't do that. You'll break it. Well, it's been
mid-cycle.
5 years now. 5 years.
Excellent. Okay. I'm mindful of we're running low on time as well, but I think this is.
I've been waffling, haven't I?
No. Yeah. I think this from a homeowner's experience. I think we should push through and keep this going for a little bit longer, because I think it's such a. It's such an important topic, and I know in the next episode we're going to talk a bit around what this means from an automation and a grid perspective and some of the challenge. But so you've now got your solar.
Yep.
Next step.
So vehicle to grid, solar. We went with a solar edge inverter for various different reasons. I do think they're a great system, having seen lots of different alternatives. They launched a product which was their high voltage battery, 10 kilowatt hour DC connected battery, which connects straight to their inverter on the string cables. So when they launched that product, that was a no-brainer, because it was a good storage capacity for value for money, and the installation was a doddle because it connected straight to the string connections. So no other DNO connections, no separate AC inverter, no AC cabling. So that was how we put our own battery in that we could then control. Because remember, the vehicle to grid's there, but we don't have control over it. So by putting the solar edge battery in, we then had control, so that we could take advantage of off-peak tariff and using the excess solar by charging the battery.
So that must have had a bit of an impact on so you've gone from, if there was an element of excess solar, your washing machine turning on.
It just happens later.
Yeah. So
on a good sunny day, we were, instead of the warning coming on at 10 o'clock in the morning saying everything was done and we were exporting too much, it might come on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Because you've charged your battery.
Charged the battery, done the dishwasher, done all the things that could use power, and then without thinking about it, and then the announcement would come on to say that we've got surplus. And sometimes you've done everything, you can't do anything else. It just goes to the grid. But it was just that nice warning to say you've got some surplus. If you need to do something, do it now.
Wow. And if you're being paid to export it to the grid, though, what would be the reason for not? Is it cheaper to like how much were you paying for electricity
at the time when we were a part of the trial, because it was part of that fixed part of that trial rate, it wasn't the standard rate. We were trying to prepare ourselves for normal life after trial, where we wouldn't be getting such an advantage to exporting. So for example, when we finished with that trial, we switched to Octopus Go, which at the time was the most sort of cost-effective time of use tariff for us. And the export rate was, I think, 8 pence. Our import rate was 28 pence during the daytime. So there was we would still be better off using what we had rather than exporting it.
Wow. Okay, so we've now got a battery. We've got smart washing machines.
There's a few things to go, isn't there?
Was it dishwasher? Was it
smart dishwasher? With a £10 plug?
Yeah,
and a bit of software. The battery, which meant we can make more use of our own power, and then charge it up at off-peak times if we needed to.
And that's the key part. A lot of people think about solar batteries as in you can only charge them from the sun when the solar's generating. But actually, you have the ability to charge you can charge the battery from the grid.
Game changer in the winter.
Yeah.
Even pre-heat pump, the battery every day we'd charge it get it up to 100% during the off-peak period, because then all of our consumption till the battery was flat, all of our consumption was effectively off-peak rate. So I think our average November or December electricity rate was like 13p a kilowatt hour, as opposed to 28.
And this is when you take the blend of the export as well? Or?
This is whatever the solar was going to kick out on a winter's day, which is not a lot. The 10 kilowatt hour battery, home battery, and whatever the vehicle to grid was doing. But again, we had no control at the time when that was first fitted.
But your 13 pence, when you take that blended rate,
it is the average. It's literally we would have used some at 27 pence, probably towards the evening. But most of our consumption for the day was at the cheaper rate, the 7.5 or the reduced rate.
So would the 13 pence have included what you would have been paid for exporting energy?
No, that's the import rate.
That's the import average. So actually, when your blended electricity rate
is even cheaper.
Yeah.
But you're not going to export a huge amount in the winter. The reality is, and if you've got an electrified home, you tend to not. You're using all the power that you generate. It's
a really important line to have in there, because, and I think we're going to save the heat pump integration for the next episode.
Okay, yeah.
But that 13 pence, when you add in the export rate as well, as a blended electricity income against expenditure, where you take those two things together,
cost of energy comes down massively.
But that when people talk about heat pumps and how effective they are, and we see it, we get barraged by negative comments around heat pumps, certainly from gas engineers, and they have this kind of set formula that they use, which is electricity is 3-4 times more expensive than gas. So your system needs to be 3 or 4 times more efficient. And in order to achieve that, you need to upgrade everything and rip everything out of your house and put it all in. We're going to talk about the way you actually dealt with that. But actually, when you start taking that blended unit rate of electricity across, utilizing smart tariffs, utilizing or adding in exported payment rates, when you get down to a comparable cost against gas for your electricity consumption, then even if your heating system only ever ran at the same efficiency of a boiler, pound for pound, you're no worse off.
Yeah, that's yeah. It's I would say it's probably hard to make it more expensive.
Yeah,
you'd have to try hard to make it more expensive.
You have investment to make these things happen, but actually, if you're on that journey, your actual running costs become.
The tariff selection is part of that, and making your system work around the tariff that you have and what you have available.
So before we end this episode, and we're going to keep everybody on tenterhooks for the heat pump journey that came alongside this, and then some of the clever stuff around the tariffs and the availability there. But what was the final step before we touched on it right at the start of the show? This induction,
the induction hob, yeah. Prior to a heat pump going in, which was always the plan, slightly longer term, that we were the last thing we had a gas hob. Was to get rid of the gas hob and put an induction hob in. So just before the heat pump did go in, we got an induction hob fitted, which meant that when the heat pump was done and the gas boiler was disconnected, we could be completely gasless. And that was it. That was our final touch.
If you tell me that you programmed Alexa to say, it's time to cook my tea.
I don't think, yeah.
You wouldn't be here now.
No, I wouldn't be here now. I mean... What's not to like about an induction hob? Yeah. Easy to clean.
I have had it come across where people have put the induction hob in but haven't necessarily gone for the induction hob compatible pans.
Yeah, that's not going to work, is it? That's going to make some smells, I think. We were lucky. One of our wedding presents was a pan set from a relative, and it happened to be induction hob compatible.
Perfect.
So we didn't need to do anything. Had to throw a few of the cheap IKEA pans away and replace them with more cheap IKEA induction pans, but
just needed that. We missed that step in the journey that we had to get married at somewhere in the way.
Yeah, somewhere we got an induction safe or induction suitable pan set.
Well, there's one thing to take away. If you are considering upgrading your pans, then make sure you get induction.
Make sure you get induction suitable.
So it's upgrade your fuels. It's connect your home so you can see your smart meter data. Upgrade your electricity supply.
Yeah, dig the road up.
Yeah, dig the road up, and buy some induction hob compatible pans.
That's it.
That's the message. That's all you've got to do.
Easy.
We're going to go on to the next episode. We're going to talk a lot more about the next step in the journey. That basically removing the gas supply is the next message, and that's a huge step. I think you've prepared your home. You've minimized your electricity consumption. You've adopted these tariffs. You've taken fossil fuel out of the equation from travel. So the next step is that huge gas load that comes with space and water heating in your home. So make sure you join us for the next episode. Thank you very much for the insight, Paul, and we'll touch on it again next.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, everyone.